Hey guys, it's Dagget here. I'm just stopping in to give you guys a little bit of a tip on doing snake scales. I was drawing up this little snake design for a video and thought that I would share with you guys a style of snake scales that we're going to do. So for this, I'm going to use a couple of different colored pencils just to give you a bit of a better look. You can just do this with your graphite lead pencil if you'd like. The first thing you're going to do is draw these long body lines that follow the shape of your snake body, and depending on how many of these you do will result in the amount of scales. Now I'm going to start by doing a line along where my belly scales end on each side of the belly scales. Now from here you're going to do a line that follows that same contour, and you're going to give yourself a little bit of a gap. And you want to try and keep the width between them as consistent as possible. So you want these two lines to be parallel to one another along the entire length of the body. Of course, there's going to be sections where it disappears into itself because of the curvature of the body, the turn. That's okay. You can sort of just bring it down from the point at which it disappears there. Okay, trying to keep it consistent and parallel. And we'll do the same thing here. Trying to keep it consistent and parallel. Keeping them parallel is going to be key to having really consistent scales. And you're going to basically continue doing this up the length of the body. Again, trying to keep the width of your lines as consistent as you can. You'll run into a problem essentially if you don't do this, which we will see if that happens, but essentially the width between your scales won't match, and it's going to be really hard to fill in the rest of the body. So once you've done all these lines going down your body, I'll use red to illustrate this next part. You're essentially going to do contour lines that follow the circular nature of the body, the cylindrical nature of the body, coming around like so. If you can see that that's in line with our belly scale there, okay? These are going to have a slight forward curvature in nature. So the end of the line here is slightly forward, and this dips forward as well on the opposite side, the widest point being at the middle there. Now you may recognize this as being similar to how we did our koi fish and dragon scales previously. It's pretty much a very similar method, but the result is drastically different, and it's a style of snake scale that I really like. And it's just going to give you a different style to play around with if you're sick of always doing the same style of scales, or if you feel like maybe your snakes always look the same and you want to do something a bit different. This will help you out there. Now, once you've drawn all your little boxes in there, you can see that this creates a sort of grid pattern. And essentially what we're going to do now is, I'll just create an example here. So that's one flat section of the grid. Of course, we're going around curves in that, which makes it a bit trickier, but that's one flat section. Now you're basically going to start on a blue line, come up to center of our red line here, or center line between the blue lines, and then link back into the blue line, like so. You can do the same thing for the next one. Now with traditional scale patterns, you will start in the center and overlap like this, but in this case we're going to follow our blue line again, like so. And again like so. So this is going to give you straight inline scales as opposed to your diamond pattern, your sort of staggered scales that you see with dragons and koi fish. This is going to give you inline scales, which is a completely different look, and like I said, might give you something more unique with your snakes. So you'll start on a blue line, come back down on a blue line, just curving up where that red line is. making sure you follow the curvature of the body. This is why we draw the blue lines in, because it gives you a really good guide for following the curvature. Okay, because the blue lines emulate the curvature of the snake's body. Now you can see now why it's important to have consistent, or at least close to consistent sizing between your blue lines, because otherwise the scales don't actually touch, and you want them to sort of butt up next to each other. Okay, and that way you've got consistent scale sizes. If you had your lines inconsistent like this, then one of your scales is going to be skinny and one of your scales will be really big. And so you're either going to have to sacrifice the size of your scale this way, or you're going to try and keep the width consistent. And now there's going to be this little gap here, and we don't want that. We want the scales to line up right next to each other with a solid line in between them. Now when it comes to doing the scales at the top of the body here, I'll give you an example. So that's the edge of your snake, and the line here is too thin to get a full scale on there. So we've got these full size scales here. And obviously you can't get a full scale into that gap. So what you can do is come up and do just a half scale. So you're coming up your blue line and curving as though this line is the middle point of your scales. Now, something I found is that practicing scales, whether it be on a snake, a koi fish, or a dragon, or any other scaled creature, I've actually found it a really great way to correct your mistakes when doing snake bodies, pretty much any serpentine body or anything with a twist in it, because the scales need to fall in at least somewhat of a realistic way. They can't have these weird, gigantic gaps in them and big weird twists in them. You know, they need to fold because they are sort of rigid. They need to go around the curves and bends in somewhat of a natural and realistic way. And the only way that's going to happen is if the shape of the body makes sense. Okay? If the shape of your snake body or serpent body is off, even by, you know, well, I mean, you can get away with a little bit, but even if it's off by a little bit, your scales aren't going to sit super nicely. There's going to be these awkward spots where you need to, for one reason or another, you need to make a scale way bigger than it should be, or way longer than it should be. And what that's going to teach you is essentially how to correct those turns, because you'll realize that if a scale is way bigger than it should be, maybe that curve is too wide and you need to taper it in a little bit. And this will help you get the thicknesses of your turns more accurate. Anyways, that was just a little video for you guys on how to do snake scales in a different way, something a little different from those diamond patterns. If you like this design, there will be a paint along video for this particular design. There'll be a link in the description to that one, and I hope you guys have a good day. All right, see you later. Bye-bye. If you like the content that I make and you'd like to support the channel, make sure you smash that like button. And hey, while you're at it, check out one of these other great videos.